morning, mathematicians. Today I'd like for you to do a quick warm-up with me called magic number. So I just took a paper and I drew a big circle and a smaller circle inside, and inside the smaller circle I wrote the number 25. Inside this whole area, I just want you to show me all the different ways that you can come up with the number 25. Now is a good time to pause the video, go ahead and do that, and come back and join me when you're ready. Alright, so hopefully you've had some time to show me all the different ways that you can write the number 25. So let's brainstorm some ideas together. One way that we can show a number is using tally marks. If you remember, tally marks are actually in bundles of 5. So watch how I show the number 25 using tally marks really quickly. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Maybe you used 10 frames to show the number 25, and if you remember, you just draw a big rectangle, draw a line, so you divide your rectangle in half. You could draw 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. Double check, your 10 frame should have 10 boxes, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then go ahead and mark your 10 frames, 10, 20, 25. Maybe you use base 10 blocks to show the number 25. If you remember to show a long or a 10, you just draw a long rectangle, 10, 20, and then draw 5 small squares. Maybe you were even able to come up with some equations. 20 plus 5 equals 25. Maybe you even broke up the number 20 into 2 10s and came up with an equation with 3 add-ins. 10 plus 5 equals 25. Maybe you're even using what you know about 1 more and 1 less. If you know that 26 is 1 more than 25, then 26 minus 1 is equal to 25. If you know that 24 is 1 less than 25, then you should know that 24 plus 1 equals 25. Maybe you even just wrote the word 25. 25. So there's lots of different ways to show a number. I just have a few examples up here. We've got tally marks, base 10 blocks, we've got 10 frames, we've got the word 25, and we have a few different equations showing the number 25. All right, mathematicians, now let's work on unpacking our word problem for the day to help you get ready for your word problems for this week. Okay, let's see what we have. So it says, there were some ducklings in the pond. So maybe you're making a mental picture and you're envisioning or you're visualizing some ducklings or baby ducks floating around in the pond. We don't exactly know how many, we just know that there are some ducklings floating in a pond. The next part of our word problem says, some ducklings flew away. Okay, so I just want you to think about that for a moment. We've got some ducklings in a pond. If some ducklings flew away, are we going to be left with more or less ducklings in the pond? Okay. Let's look at the next part of our word problem. It says, there are some ducklings left floating on the pond. Okay? So again, we had some ducklings floating in the pond. Some of these ducklings flew away. but there's still some ducklings left floating in the pond. Is that going to be more or less than how many ducklings we started with? So let's look and see what we are solving for. How many ducklings were in the pond at first? Okay, so when I'm reading this, I'm going to reread it one more time. And I'm going to think about what it's actually asking me to solve for. How many ducklings were in the pond at first? Okay, then that means how many ducklings were in the pond at first before the ducklings that flew away. Now let's add some numbers to our word problem and see if we can figure out how many ducklings were there at first. Okay, I'm going to write the number 10 and the number 15. Now, let's read our word problem one more time now that we have some numbers entered in. There were some ducklings in the pond. 10 ducklings flew away. Okay, so again, we don't know exactly how many ducklings were in the pond, but we know that 10 of them flew away. There are 15 ducklings left floating on the pond. How many ducklings were in the pond at first? All right, boys and girls, now is actually a good time to pause this video and see if you can use some kind of a strategy to show me how many ducklings flew away, how many ducklings are left floating on the pond, and how many ducklings were in the pond at first. All right, come back when you are ready. All right, mathematicians, welcome back. Let's revisit our word problem one more time before we start going over some of the different strategies. So again, our word problem said that there were some ducklings in the pond. 10 ducklings flew away. There are 15 ducklings left floating on the pond. How many ducklings were in the pond at first? All right, mathematicians. So one strategy that I noticed that a lot of students were using last week when they were working on a word problem to solve for an unknown is drawing out a visual representation for each of the parts in a word problem. So for example, one friend may have drawn out 10 ducklings flying away and the 15 ducklings that are floating on the pond. So I like this because the thinking is very clear. You can tell that these are the 10 ducklings flying away and that the 15 ducklings over here are floating on the pond. They're using different colors, even different symbols to represent the two different parts of the word problem, right? So remember also that mathematicians, they're not artists, right? They're efficient. That means they are quick when they're showing their work, but also accurate. So you want to choose a visual representation or a drawing that's quick, but also clear. So you can see here that with the 10 ducklings that flew away, the 15 left in the pond, an equation that would match your thinking would be 10 plus 15, and then you would find, if you count all of these ducklings, that there were 25 ducklings to start with. And I'm even going to change this and actually add a label. So 25 ducklings, because good mathematicians, they add a label to their answers to make it clear. Okay, so another strategy that I thought was very efficient that I actually want to highlight is called counting on. So when you're counting on, you're holding the first number in your brain. You're holding that number in your head. Okay, you can even write the number 10. And that's your placeholder. So you know you can circle it as a reminder that that's your starting point. You're not going to actually count the number 10, but you're going to count on from the number 10. So you know that there's 10 ducklings that flew away, but there's 15 ducklings that are still left on the pond. So from here you can count 15 spaces or 15 numbers and see what number you land on. So 1, 2, 13, 14. You could even do jumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Okay, so counting on from the number 10 and jumping 15 times, right, you can land on the number 25, and you would find that there were originally, or at first, 25 ducklings in the pond. And again, I'm going to write 25 and add the word ducklings as my label. Okay, so a number sentence to match this thinking would actually be the same. 10 plus 15 equals 25. Okay? Another strategy that one of my students actually used last week was working with doubles and working with the friendly number 10. Let me show you what that looks like. So when you're trying to solve 10 ducklings flew away. When you're thinking flew away, you're thinking that there's already less ducklings than there were to begin with. So maybe you can even show a symbol to represent that. Minus 10. Okay, and then the word problem says there are 15 ducklings left floating on the pond. So if there's 15 ducklings left, some ducklings were on the pond, 10 flew away. So we know that we lost 10 ducklings, but there are still 15 left. So what minus 10 equals 15? And I have a friend in my class who does such an awesome job of working with doubles and working with the friendly number 10 and working and using what he knows to solve for the unknown. So for example, he might say, well, I know that 10 plus 10 equals 20. 10 plus 10 equals 20. So 20 minus 10 equals 10. 20 minus 10 equals 10. But I'm looking for the number 15, not 10. So I'm going to add this 5 plus 5, and then I'm going to add plus 5 over here. So it's going to be 25 minus 10 equals 15. And then I would be able to solve for my unknown. And I would rewrite that with my label, 25 ducklings. All right, boys and girls, so here are 3 different ways to solve the same word problem. So remember, mathematicians, we're efficient and we can use different tools and strategies to solve a word problem and explain how I use them. Okay, so this week while you're working on your math word problems, I want you to maybe try 1 or 2 different strategies to check your work. All right? Okay, good luck.